This video is going to deal mainly with the multiplier and all the information found in Module 16. The multiplier is important in AP Macro because a lot of the times the multiplier is what you're going to use when you conduct fiscal policy and other things. And the multiplier is going to let you know how much a change in spending is going to change real GDP. So often there'll be multiple choice questions you'll be expected to use this for, and also free response questions. Now, before we get going, there's some definitions that I have up on the screen that you want to copy down. A couple things you need to be aware of. Anytime we see C, that's going to be consumption, and S is savings. What we do know is that C plus S will equal disposable income. Okay, and you see disposable income listed down here. Disposable income simply is your money after taxes and transfers. So to give you two examples, if you, many of you might work a job in the summer and you might work, let's say 40 hours a week, and if you make $10 an hour, that means you would make $400 a week. However, you can't really cash your check for $400 a week if you got paid weekly because there's taxes that are taken out. So disposable income, the easiest way to think about that is not the money you could have made or you did make. It's what you can actually cash your check for. So that would be disposable income. So not the money in the upper right-hand corner, but the money in the box on the check that you're actually allowed to go to the bank. So if you make $10 an hour, 40 hours a week, that's $400. You might go to the bank with a check for like $347.18. That's your disposable income. My grandmother, who's 92 years old, her disposable income includes money she gets after Social Security. So you just want to think about your money after taxes and after transfers. As a rule in this class, if you look up here at this equation, what that's telling you is all the money you have two options to do with it. You can either consume it or you can save it. And that's essentially it. Okay. You can try to come up with weird scenarios, like what if you burn money or do all this stuff. Just keep it really simple. Okay, you either consume it or you save it. You either spend it now or you don't spend it now, which is savings. Okay, whether you put it in the bank, you put it under your mattress, you bury it in the backyard, whatever you do with it, if you're not consuming it now, you are by definition saving that money. Okay, so those are really your only two options. Now we kind of scroll down here a little bit. We got some other things. We got the marginal propensity to consume and the marginal propensity to save. The marginal propensity to consume and the marginal propensity to save, okay, obviously I'm having a little issue saying that. It sounds more complicated than it is. All this cares about is what percentage, so these two things, the MPC, which is marginal propensity to consume, and the MPS, the marginal propensity to save, is just caring about what percentage, okay, of the change in disposable income do you consume, or what percentage of the change in total disposable income do you save? So not the entire amount, just the change in disposable income. And as you can see here, that's what the equation for the MPC is. MPC is the change in consumption over the change in disposable income, DI. And MPS, as you can see, is down here. The change in savings over the change in disposable income. Now, why do we care about the changes? One, because humans tend to think on the margins, okay? That's what we're sort of talking about here. You're going to deal with different changes as they arise, okay? If you get a bonus at work for $1,000, what percentage of that bonus are you going to consume, and what percentage of that bonus are you going to save? Or let's say you get a tax refund or a tax break from the government for $1,000. What percentage of that tax are you going to consume? What percentage are you going to save? If disposable income goes up, both MPC and MPS, well, actually, I should say if disposable income goes up, both consumption and savings is going to increase. And if disposable income goes down, both consumption and savings will decrease. Okay? And we'll talk about that in a second. This down here is really a key piece of information. Okay? This is true in this class, that the MPC and the MPS must equal 1. And why that is important is a lot of the times you will have to use this information to figure out what the multipliers are. And this is the information, the MPC or the MPS, that they're going to give you to determine what the multiplier is. Okay, so if we follow that logic, if the MPC plus the MPS must equal 1, that means if this is 0.9, they are also telling you that this is 0.1. Okay? If they tell you this is 0.8, they are also telling you this is 0.2. If this is 0.75, they are telling you this is 0.25. If this is, we'll just kind of keep going here. Obviously repeating here on both of these, close enough. And these are the ones they're going to tend to use, but they could technically use any number, they just won't, because remember, this isn't a math test and they don't want to make it too complicated. So if they said it would, the MPC was 0.83, that would mean the MPS is 0.17. They're just not going to do that. Okay. A lot of the times they're going to give you this piece of information here. They're going to give you the MPC, and it's really the MPS that is the thing that you are going to try to figure out. They will give you the MPC because they want to test that you know that this equation is true. And so if they give you the MPC, they are also giving you the MPS without directly saying the MPS is this. And so often you need to find the MPS to be able to complete fiscal policy or use the multiplier. And this way, if they give you the MPC, they can test two concepts at once. They can test the MPC of the MPS equals 1, and then they can test that you actually know what to do with the multiplier once you get it. Okay, so a couple things. As we, once again, you're trying to find the MPS. This is the thing that you're going to care about a lot. Now, if you read Module 16 and you do the homework and you look through the packets, a lot of the equations for the multipliers are going to seem a little complicated. This is a very simplified version of that. I'm going to give you a shortcut that you can use that basically is going to allow you to do everything you need to do if you can just find the MPS. Okay, and so once again, the MPC and the MPS equals 1. They have to give you a little piece of information here. And then once they do that, you're going to be able to figure out what the multiplier is. Now I'm going to add some things on here. One thing I would like you to do anytime you come up with the MPS is I would like you to think of the MPS as a fraction. So if this is 1/10, if this is, sorry, 0.1, that means this is 1/10. If that's 0.2, that's 1/5. If that's 0.25, that's 1/4. 0.33 would be 1/3, and 0.5 is 1/2. If you can convert the decimals, because a lot of the times they'll give you a decimal or a percent, if you can convert that to a fraction, it's going to make things a lot easier for you. Okay, so you just want to think of those things as a fraction. The next thing we want to do is we want to figure out what the multipliers are. Okay. Now, what is the purpose of the multiplier? The multiplier is basically what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to try to figure out how much does the change in spending cause a change in GDP, right? So in other words, if you increase spending by $1 billion, how much is that $1 billion of spending going to change real GDP? One thing that you should remember from the circular flow diagrams is when money gets spent in one category, so if you buy goods and services from, let's say, Best Buy now is going to give income to workers, and those workers are now going to have money and they can go out and spend. So a change in spending is going to have a greater change on real GDP than the actual spending, and that is due to the multiplier effect. It's going to have, you could say, a multiplied effect through the economy. One way to think about this is almost like if you threw a rock in a lake, okay, a calm lake, it's going to have almost like a ripple effect out that's slowly going to dissipate over time. That's what the multiplier effect really is. Okay, and so technically the multiplier is going to be something that you are going to have to find in order to figure out what the change in spending you did is going to cause a change in GDP. Okay, now there's a couple of different multipliers. The spending multipliers you're going to find the same way. Okay, and the spending multipliers are going to be, sometimes it will be the government spending multiplier. And you'll know it's the government spending multiplier because they'll have you say the government increases spending on bridges for $1 billion, let's say. The investment multiplier, the investment spending multiplier, that's going to be $1 business spends $1 billion to build a new facility. Or sometimes they're just going to talk to you about the quote unquote multiplier, or the consumption multiplier, or the simple spending multiplier. Any of those is just kind of a generic, someone increased spending by $1,000, what's going to be the total impact on real GDP through. And the good news is all the spending multipliers you're going to find the exact same way. Okay, so there's not going to be a lot of mystery when it comes to that. All right, so you have government spending, investment spending, and simple spending multiplier. Well, remember before I said the MPC and the MPS equals 1. Okay, so you're going to find all of these by thinking in terms of a fraction. So if MPC is 0.9, that means the MPS is going to be 0.1 or 1/10. Okay? If this is 0.8, we just went over this. This is 0.2, that's 1/5. If it's 0.75, this is 0.25 or 1/4. We'll stop there just so I don't have to scroll down. We kind of get the point. Okay, once you find the MPS, all you're going to have to do to figure out what these three multipliers are, the government spending multiplier, the investment spending multiplier, the simple or the consumption multiplier, the spending multiplier, whatever, however generically they say that, is you're just going to take the reciprocal of the MPS. So in other words, if the MPS is 1/10, all of these multipliers, and I'm just going to change up the colors here, all of these multipliers are going to be 10. If this is 1/5, all of these multipliers are going to be 5. If this is 1/4, all of these multipliers are going to be 4. So in many ways, if you confuse the government spending or the investment multiplier, a lot of times when you're doing the math, it's not going to matter because those multipliers are the same. Now, why are there multipliers? If you think about what's happening here, I'll just use a quick government spending example. If the government spends $1 billion to build a bridge, it's an initial change in spending of $1 billion. But then think about what happens. The workers that work on the bridge get paid and they now have money to spend. The people that make the steel for the bridge, let's say it's the bridge by exit 14 by us, there could be a factory in the middle of Pennsylvania that's making that steel. Those factory workers now have some income to spend and they go out in their town and they go out to dinner at a restaurant. Now the people in that restaurant in Pennsylvania, they have money to spend. And then they go home and they go online and they buy something that was made in Seattle. And now someone in Seattle has money to spend, and it keeps working its way through the system. Now it dissipates over time because of this concept. So if a company spends $1 billion to build a bridge, that's an initial change in spending of $1 billion. The next group of people get income from this and they MPC and MPS that income. So let's say I get paid $1,000 to help build the bridge. I then MPC and MPS that $1,000. So if this is my MPC, right here, 0.9. That means I'm only going to consume 900 of that dollars, and I'm going to save 1,000. The savings, in many ways, almost like a leakage, kind of weakens the effect. And what ends up happening is, so since I spend 900, now 900 gets re-injected back into the economy. And then what happens with that 900? That 900 gets MPC'd and MPS'd. So 90% of 900 is 810. They would save 90. And then the next round would continue. Someone else goes out and spends 810, and the MPC MPS cycle keeps going on and on and on and on until eventually, you're talking like there's 10 cents, 9 cents get consumed, 1 cent gets saved, and it's basically dissipated, almost like the ripple effect at the end. As it gets farther and farther away from the initial spending, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. Okay. Hopefully this clears up how to find the multipliers or how to figure out what these three multipliers are. I will show you how to use those in the tax multiplier and the transfer multiplier in a separate video.